Envision. Welcome to episode 17, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of the Construction Dream Team podcast, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn about the people side of construction and build your construction dream team based on OPE, other people's experiences. Why suffer? Let's learn from everyone else. So I'm really excited. We have created a Construction Dream Team LinkedIn group. There's millions of construction folks on LinkedIn. It's a perfect place to tap into the collective wisdom of the entire construction nation and continue the conversations that we're having in Construction Dream Team. So we've created a special page for you to make it easier. You can go to cdtlinkedin.com. That's cdtlinkedin.com. And you can join the group there, and we have some other information. So head on over there. It'll be great. Okay, we are so privileged today to have our guest, Jit Kee Chin, as she is really making a huge difference in the industry. And I was told by several people that if I wanted to talk to somebody who's making it happen, she's the person. So I'm so excited that she said yes to being with us today. And let me just tell you a little bit about Jit. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief Data Officer for Suffolk. That's a national building contractor that does $4 billion in annual revenue. They have offices in most of the urban areas around the U.S. Her role is to leverage the power of modern techniques in data and analytics to help Suffolk build better. And she has the end-to-end responsibility for setting and implementing Suffolk's data strategy. And I think you're going to just get so much out of this. So listen up and hear what the person who's really setting the stage for what might happen in the next years in the industry. So Jet, I want to invite you so much to tell us a little bit about your journey to getting to where you are now, the Executive Vice President and Chief Data Officer for Suffolk. That must have been quite a journey.
Yes, it is. And thank you very much, Sue. Very delighted to be here in Construction Nations and delighted to share my experience.
Tell us a little bit about your journey for how did you become a data person in construction? I guess that would be the most important question right now.
Yeah, there's not so many of us around, that's for sure. So my journey was a potentially an unusual one, and it was certainly not premeditated. My dad was a mathematician. He trained himself to be a computer scientist because back in the day, computer science didn't exist when he went to school. He instilled in me an early love of numbers and algorithms. And so I went on to obtain my undergraduate and graduate degrees from Caltech and MIT, respectively. I loved what I did, but when I graduated, I wanted to understand how the world worked more broadly. I sort of found myself at a point when you graduate from a physics PhD, maybe about 50 to 100 people in the world could understand what you were doing. So I shifted my career and I spent the next decade with McKinsey & Company, a global management consulting firm that works with Fortune 500 companies to help solve their most critical problems. When I was there, I focused primarily on strategic transformations, developing the strategy, implementing them, working with organizations to change effectively. And as part of the apprenticeship there, I was privileged enough to see a broad range of functions and industries. One of them was construction. And at the time, I thought construction was a really interesting industry because it has such a huge impact on our day-to-day lives, developing and building these amazing spaces that we sort of live, work, and play in. The other thing that it did is that it put me in a great position to see how all of these industries were being impacted by the advances in digital data and technology over the last 5 to 10 years. That was the period when it stopped being the domain of just tech companies and started to impact all other industries. So with my kind of background and interest in data analytics, I became really interested to learn about and implement the strategies for how an entire business and organization can actually harness the power of data analytics to solve real-world problems. So I'd say I was prepared. And then a chance encounter led me to Suffolk and Suffolk's executive team sometime about 2 years ago. I guess they liked what they saw. They offered me an opportunity to lead their data transformation instead of just advise as a consultant. And I happily accepted. So that was the journey, many twists and turns.
So in the last 2 years, you really have been seeing all over the industry a true emergence of using data in a lot of forms of AI and virtual design and construction. And do you think that at the point you jumped in, maybe that was a turning point for the industry to be ready for this new transformation that is upon us?
I think so, and I say that with a bit of caution and hesitation because it feels like if we think about the advent of BIM, building information modeling, sort of 20 years ago, people probably thought so then too. And there are many other points in the industry's history where one could claim to be a turning point. I think it is a true turning point now for a number of reasons. I see the explosion of outside interest, not just industry veterans in this space. So if you monitor the startup ecosystem, you see who's actually starting to found companies and develop technologies in AI and BDC to address this problem. That's gone through an explosive growth. You look at the capital that's going into this industry from very renowned venture firms, and that's undergone a transition as well. You sort of look at the fact that other industries have perhaps charted the path in some of the AI techniques. And so a lot of libraries of algorithms, a lot of platforms are now ubiquitous and actually make it easier for others to develop on top of. All of this come together to make me believe that this is now kind of a true turning point. From the industry side, the mandate to actually use these technologies to improve is also there. It's a very hot market right now. We have labor shortages. And so the problem is there as well to solve. And it's a huge potential just given the size of the industry. So that's why I believe that we are at this turning point. I think hopefully, in 5 years when I look back, I'll say I joined at the perfect time.
Seems like it. I see it too, emerging rapidly. But the point taken that BIM was here for quite a long time before we got really full adoption. I'm just now seeing it starting to begin to be used a little bit on horizontal projects. So it's taken a long time. But in your role, I mean, you're in a leadership role now in a large construction company. I'm really curious about your leadership style and kind of how are you working to lead this group and this company and the industry into this new millennium?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the honest answer probably is still I'm feeling my way through it all. So I'm always very humble when I speak to people in the industry because so many people I speak to have been in the industry for so long, and this does feel like an industry where it's just the complexity of it and the technical requirements and expertise that's needed is so high that you need 10, 20, 30 years under your belt. And I have this remarkable opportunity to come in and leverage my background and my experience to sort of contribute to this. And so I think the way I think about leading through this is to say, what does the industry ecosystem look like today? What are the big problems that we have to solve? So it's always problem back. And how do we think about the different players within the industry and what problem or what part of the problem are they best placed to solve? And then when I work my way down towards me and Suffolk and how we can play a part in this, I think that the best thing that I can do as a leader is to leverage my background from other industries to say where could this probably go, right? What are some of the things that have been proven successful and that can be applied here? And then start sharing that ideas to leverage the experience of others to really see when it works here. I think for us to really realize the potential of AI and technology, we're going to need the industry to come together instead of each individual player doing its own thing, right? And so as these ideas get shared and people sort of come together to collectively solve the big problems, I suspect the role will evolve. Is that a is that a good answer?
It is, and it leads me to
a difficult question.
Well, yes, we're asking you to forecast what's going to happen. It leads me to a curious question as to if you're going to come together as an industry. Do you have any vision for what that might look like, or what's needed for that to occur in a meaningful way? Is it through the trade associations? Is it through projects? How do you envision that?
I'm not sure. I think part of it will be, so let me give an example of where some things have actually come to fruition and may sort of chart a course for how it could happen in the future. So just very recently, last week actually, I think ourselves and SmartVid, which is a partner of ours, they're a startup that focuses on image recognition using AI, announced the formation of something called a Predictive Analytics Strategic Council. And this is a banding together of different players in the industry, primarily contractors, but also from other parts of the value chain like insurance, to say that we would like as an industry, because there's so much risk in this industry, to look forwards instead of back and to control risk more. And we're focused on safety risk to start, right? And so we formed this Predictive Analytics Council, whose goal is to actually leverage the power of predictive analytics to predict risk before they happen so that we can take action to mitigate that risk. Now, in order for AI to work, AI feeds on data. And so the coalition of people who've signed up for this have signed up to sort of share information around, images, etc., and safety information to say, to help the AI algorithms learn and predict better. And I'm quite struck by it because I don't think it's that common for our industry to come together in this way to solve a common problem. Now, it's very early. We literally just launched it. There's about 10 members at the moment. But there seems to be a lot of interest. We're fielding a lot of questions around what it takes to join, can I join, etc. So that's just one example of how the industry could come together for very clearly defined problems that are in everybody's best interest to improve upon, how we could come together to solve it.
That's a great example. And it kind of leads me to my next question, which I'm sure all of us are thinking, okay, big data. What are we going to do with big data in construction? That seems almost like an oxymoron. So help everyone understand how big data is going to be turned into something that is a tool.
Yeah. So, construction is lagging many other industries in terms of leveraging big data and advanced analytics, in my view. And I think there's lots of reasons for this that we don't have to go into. But, some observations that I have of the current state is that a lot of construction data just looks backwards instead of forwards, right? We do a lot of reporting, typically monthly, typically manually, pulling information from lots of different systems, and we look backwards. Whereas what you really want to do, because of the amount of risks involved in construction, time risk, cost risk, quality risk, safety risk, you would like to look forwards instead of back. Or put another way, use the historical information to look forward. A lot of information is also quite siloed. It is an industry where applications have evolved to serve very specific functional needs. So you have a scheduling application, an estimating application, you have your VDC application, you have then your financial systems. And typically it's not so easy for that information to flow across the different systems. But a project is, in its entirety, requires, to understand a project in its entirety requires understanding the information from all these systems. So I think the other potential advantage that a lot of the modern technologies allow us is to actually take all this information and sew them together. And then the final thing, which a lot of industries, digital industries, have actually gotten accustomed to, is real-time information. So you can react faster instead of just waiting for that report, every week, every month to come out. So, how I see big data transforming construction is to say, well, let's always look forwards instead of looking back. Let's use that historical information, but always predict or forecast ahead, right? Let's actually leverage all the information that we have to hand. And information, whether or not that's a number, whether or not that's a text in an RFI and a submittal, whether or not that's an image, whether or not that's sensor information that's coming online, let's leverage those heterogeneous information to actually solve the problems and take the decisions that we have to take every day, right? And let's make that flow near real time, right? Whether or not that's a daily beat, hourly beat or a minute beat, whatever the need is, let's actually get that information to the people that need it in as close to real time as possible so the jobs go smoothly. So that's kind of the characteristics of what I hope to see the construction industry move towards in, say 5 years time, 10 years time. Mm-hmm. To the earlier point on BIM, not quite sure about adoption yet, but that's the vision.
That would be very exciting. I know in a project I was just working on a couple of days ago, the team was talking about it would be so wonderful if we just had one system where you could actually get the information from, but instead you have to go and kind of gather it and then look at it and try to figure out what it's telling you. That would be amazing. So that kind of leads us to overarching, I hear what you're talking about, these predictive analytics and maybe a beat, depending on what cadence you need, that you're getting more or less real-time information that is predictive based on reality. What else are you hoping for to achieve, like for the company itself and maybe for the industry overall? Just drill down a little bit for us.
Yeah. So let me take the company first. I think for Suffolk, I would like to see every major and eventually every minor and every decision to be based on the most cutting edge data and analytics that actually help us take better decisions, right? And better decisions are those that control risk better, they build better, right? Deliver a better outcome to our owners, and also a better experience for our employees and for all the stakeholders that we work with, our trade partners, our suppliers, our vendors, architects, designers, etc. Right? There's a sense that, the construction industry isn't necessarily the most attractive industry for young, bright talent to enter into, and it doesn't need to be that way. Like I said, sort of the mission of building a space where people live, work, and play in for decades to come is a very exciting mission. And I think we need to transform the experience of working in this industry somewhat for the younger generation. So that's the vision for Suffolk. And the emphasis here is really on the decisions and on supporting what needs to be done rather than data for the sake of data or analytics for the sake of analytics. I think many people have found that if they don't have a very clear idea of what decisions, the analyses and information has to drive and what kind of outcome it should deliver, then it sort of, lacks a purpose, if you like.
Yes. Yeah. So better decisions, faster decisions, smarter decisions.
So you put it perfectly, Sue. You put it absolutely perfectly. I think then for the industry, what I'm hoping to achieve is just to play a part, however it shapes up, to really shape the industry towards the adoption of some of these new technologies so that we all benefit. As we talked about, this is a complex industry. The value chain cuts across many different types of companies with different business models. And to deliver one building, everyone has to come together and work together to deliver it, right? So how to shape this ecosystem so that outcomes overall improve? I mean, it's sort of commonly accepted that in this industry, productivity has either stagnated or declined over the last few decades, which is in direct contrast to pretty much all other non-farm industries in the US.
Absolutely.
So what would it take to actually raise that? So, whether or not that's, forming bodies where we share information across different stakeholders that will allow us to better control risk, whether or not that's hopefully moving towards a system of clearly understood performance benchmarks is another example, like the manufacturing industries have, that so we can all say, this is how well a building needs to be delivered. Here's the types of benchmarks we can always measure ourselves against. Why not that's actually developing use cases for predictive analytics or other types of advanced analytics so that we constantly get smarter in the way we build. And I like to call it AI-assisted construction because I think buildings will need people to build them for a long time to come, but we could always use some help given the complexity of the job. No matter how it is, I hope to play a part in shaping this ecosystem and being part of that conversation that will advance us collectively.
Well, we're very happy that you're here. I'm very intrigued by something you said too, because it's true. We see on every project in this booming economy, and we know the economy won't boom forever, but we know that there is a demographic change that's happening where the people in construction are older and the younger folks are not choosing to come here. And I couldn't agree with you more that what could be cooler than building something? So you had mentioned that you think that we can be attractive to the younger folks too. Do you think that's in the AI component of it and being more a part of this change? Is that what you think is possible?
I think it's probably broader than just AI. I view digital data technology as part of an overall trend of, call it digital convergence. And for good measure, we could throw automation and robotics in there too. And these are the tools that the younger generation would be much more familiar with. I mean, they see it every day in their as a consumer, right? Whether or not you have like your latest smart home assistants like Alexa or its equivalent, whether or not you can order a car ride just from tapping your phone, and then from there on to all sorts of other things, right? Food gets delivered now at the tap of the phone and everything else. They're familiar with these technologies, they've used it, and I think that the base expectation probably is that it should be carried over into the work life. And so if you take someone who wants to be a super or a project manager, and you bring them into a work environment that says, nope, you still have to fill in all these paper forms. You still have to like submit them at this time. And, here's all the standard operating procedures that you have to do. And they're highly manual. They're not integrated across silos. You can't get data at the tip of your fingers. I think they'll just get discouraged and they'll ask the very logical question, well, why can't I do this? Obviously the technology exists, And so I think not just AI, but all the different facets of digital convergence has to come to construction to actually encourage a new generation of talent to join this industry.
That is very exciting. And I think something that everybody needs to be thinking about. I was just in another project last week where they asked if they could use their tablet to do their extra work bills because they've been doing on speedy memos. And I thought, really? You're using speedy memos? Really? Yeah. And so that was their big breakthrough.
Well, it's a tough industry. Well, it's a tough industry to change, though. And there are sort of good reasons for why it's a tough industry to change, right?
It is.
There's a lot of inertia.
It's tough, yeah. So I'm really curious as to kind of what specific tools you're developing and that are going to help teams be more effective.
Well, there's a whole roadmap. Let's see. Why don't I give an example of something on what I would consider to be the simpler tools, through to the example of the more advanced. I think on the simpler end, I'm a big believer in transparency, driving the right outcomes. Most people want to do the right thing. They want to deliver a good job. And I think the struggle often has been that lack of one system to get all the relevant information from, right? And to truly understand kind of how you're doing at any given time. So one of the tools that we're developing right now is a project dashboard. So a dashboard is something that reveals information in real time. Think about the speedometer on your car. Any time when you drive, you can just glance down at it and it tells you what speed you're at, right? And it's very visual. It gives you that visual representation of how the whole project is going at any given time. And we can, run through the set of metrics, but it's things like how is it doing financially? How is it doing safety-wise? How is it doing schedule-wise? How are you doing on change management? How are you doing on quality? So on and so forth. That's probably a range of 20, 30 metrics that one could usefully look at to say what's going on, right? We're developing the dashboards that pulls the information from multiple systems and then displays it in a really easy to consume fashion to the entire project team. And that
transparency alone drives behavior change and greater mindfulness for the kinds of outcomes that are being exposed, right? And so, like a car speedometer, like when you notice that you're speeding or you're getting into dangerous territory, you automatically take the steps that you need to take to actually correct it. And that's the idea for the project dashboard. I think over time, it's a great platform to also then embed lots of other kind of improvements or analytics to it. So you could improve it by then adding not just, kind of where you are now in this point in time. You could say, well, given the current run rate or the current situation, where will you be, right? You can embed things like, well, actually, if I don't just tell you your safety rate, but I tell you out of the image recognition prediction that we're building out, how likely it is that next week will be a problematic week, so on and so forth. It really starts to help people on the ground take that decision. And the other benefit of a dashboard like this is that you can, what I call, roll it up or drill it down. So, if you're a project team, you look at a project, but then if you're at a regional or a national level and you need oversight of multiple projects, you can actually, look at the portfolio really simply, and you will see exactly the same information that your project team does. So that's never a debate between like, well, are you doing, is your performance actually X? And, the other person says, no, it's Y. And then you realize that there was just a time difference or a reporting error or something in the chain, right? So
that sounds pretty exciting. It sort of reminds me of how we know what weather's happening where.
Yeah.
And we can see it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
exactly right.
And because on projects, it used to be, that was such a big deal. There would be in a spec and say, we're going to look at this particular weather forecast on this particular time and make a decision. Now we're like, okay, what's happening on this street?
That's right. That local rain cloud right there raining down. It's a simple concept, actually, a very elegant concept, but actually the implementation of it requires Herculean efforts from a data extraction, integration, governance, and then the adoption and trying to, as you know, all projects are different at different stages and spread out very geographically. The change management and the education process to drive adoption is huge.
So what do you see as barriers to creating these strong teams that adopt these things and then create extraordinary results? But what do you see as some of the barriers?
Yeah, so I see there to be probably three buckets of barriers, if you like. One has to do with it's structural. It's basically what project portfolios look like for us or, for any other contractor. Projects are unique, a lot of differences in building characteristics, in owner preferences, in the size of the project, in the complexity of the project. And so, one challenge I often hear people say is, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that because my owner would like it this way or because my project is done this way. So overcoming this to say that, even though that is true, there is a baseline of things that are always typically the same and, just customize that remaining 10%. I think that takes time. Project life cycles are also very long. For the types of projects we build, we're averaging 2 to 3 years, but the pace of technology change right now is on a monthly basis. And so how do you match those two very different time scales, right? Because midstream changes are very difficult to implement on a project. Very independent project mentality, individual P&Ls, they're like mini businesses. So, you're basically having to sell to each project every time. And how do you have people understand that there are economies of scale here if we all move in concert? And very geographically dispersed. So that's kind of, the challenges with the project portfolio itself and sort of structurally. I think talent we've talked to. Go on.
Oh, I was just saying, I can see how you could get the economies of scale, and once you've scaled, technology's already moved on. So then you have to make a choice of economies of scale or economies of scope. Folks getting focused on what we know. Yeah, I think that could be that will be a roller coaster for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then we talked a lot about talent. We talked about the generational change, right? And then we talked in general, there being a labor shortage industry wide. So when people are really busy, it's hard to learn new things. And then I think the last bucket is financial, actually. So speaking from a general contractor's perspective, it is a low margin business, highly fragmented industry, and it's well documented that R&D spend is slow. But, to actually make some of these technologies work, we do need to invest. And that may point a way towards another way for the industry to collaborate, which is to pool R&D spend if no one company can actually afford it. And it takes a bit. The other challenge with financial factors is that it takes almost a leap of faith to believe, because it's really hard to measure return on investment and value on some of these. You just need to sort of move ahead and try it and have the best ROI case you can up front. But there's an element of risk. So we need to be comfortable with that.
And of course, there's the people part where this is how we've always done it attitude. How do we overcome that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Just to share very quickly, one of the things that we've started doing is reverse mentorship. Because you say that the older generation, they're not used to it, but the younger generation is just much more familiar with some of these applications in their consumer lives. And so, but they lack the experience of building. And so a reverse mentorship pairing where both can learn from each other has been successful for us.
That sounds very interesting. I think some more of that could be happening across the industry with some very great benefits. Yeah, I could see that. So shifting a little bit to more about you, I'm sure that you have had a lot of challenges over the time of your career. So tell us a little bit about maybe the worst challenges you faced, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, gosh, on this one again, there's so many, Sue. It's so hard to pick. We face challenges. I think all of us face challenges every day in our career. Most recently, I suppose the one that sticks in my mind is a career shift that I took about 4 years ago when I came back from London to Boston. So, most of my time at McKinsey and Company was actually spent in their London office. I had moved there after graduating from my doctorate because I wanted to see a different geography, and I love to travel more broadly. So I had headed over there, and I had a great time. It was a lovely city, so global in nature, and I saw and learned a lot. But then at some point, I got to a point where I'm like, I kind of need to come home. I didn't have any family ties in London. I was getting to an age where I wanted to be closer to my family, which is either in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia or in Boston, where my sister's family is. And so I took the decision to move back. And at the time when I took that decision, I didn't really have anything lined up in my career. There were things I could do, but nothing that was exciting. But I knew I had to do it. So I deliberately took a step back. I took a step back in scope of responsibilities and commensurate compensation. And I came back and I said, this is my true north. I think that my next phase of my career has to be in this geography. And I will accept the learnings and the consequences of taking that step back, right? And so I came back from London to Boston. And I think in hindsight, it was a more difficult step than I had even envisioned going in, because you have to build a whole new network. I didn't really know anyone professionally here. I had to switch what I did. And so that was the time when I shifted 100% to focus on data analytics. And then I had to rebuild. And that is, that takes time. And that was a huge challenge. But in hindsight, it was the best thing I could have done, because coming out of it, here I am. I'm, talking to you. I'm the Chief Data Officer of Suffolk, and I love what I do. And
we're so happy you're there. I can't wait to see what happens over the next few years. It's so exciting. So, yeah, that's a big step. And isn't it true? Sometimes it's those ones you just take on faith that you do that turn into being kind of your life's mission. It's exciting. So I'm sure that
Yeah, and side steps are good sometimes because it leads to, you have to create the space for something else to grow. And even if you're successful in one track, I think if you realize that the future is no longer for you for whatever reason, relocating or taking a step back in order to take a bigger step forwards in the future, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely. It's not always easy because you can't see what's going to happen, but it is process for moving forward.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've gotten a lot of advice from a lot of people over your career. What is the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I ever got is, is like it's a mathematical Venn diagram. They're like, figure out what you are really good at. There's a big pile of stuff there, and figure out what you're passionate about, right? And there's another pile of stuff. Hopefully, there's something that intersects at the middle, and then just go do that, right? Because stuff that you're good at, other people will want your expertise in that. And then stuff you're excited about, you'll like to get up every morning and go to work. So if you can find that intersecting piece and always hold to that intersection of things that you're both good at and that people want you to do, and things you're excited by, you can never go wrong professionally. And every time I lose my way, I think about that and I hew back to true north.
It's a great visual. I love Venn diagrams because it works also for contractor, owner, designer. It works for so many things to looking for where are those parts where we have common purpose or that we can build on. Yeah, works very well.
Yes.
So who've been your mentors or reverse mentors?
Yeah, I have a number of reverse mentors nowadays because, even I can't keep up with all the changes in technology, and I rely on my excellent team to actually educate and inspire me, frankly, with some of the new advances. I think at different stages, one has different mentors. It depends on where you are and what you are, challenged by, and therefore who can point the way. And so when I first started my career, I had a set of mentors who really excited me and inspired me to solve a lot of different problems and really to solve the most challenging problem that I could solve. And so ranging from, my PhD professor, Professor Wolfgang Ketterle from MIT, going through some of the first partners I worked with when I was at McKinsey & Company. They are the ones that really mentored me and helped me find what I was passionate about. I think as you approach mid-career and you enter management, they're the focus on how do you manage and mentor others? How do you lead a team, inspire a team, and go from doing to managing? It's a different set of inspiration and mentors that we need. And they're the ones I've respected most are the ones that have allowed me to self-reflect, that instead of telling me what to do, have taught me how to think. And so they ask questions, they probe me, they make sure that, I, at least in my own mind, know that what I'm doing is the right way. And so again, I point to senior partners in primarily McKinsey's London office that has inspired me. And now in kind of the executive level, where I am now in my career, it's really about vision. I admire those leaders who, without knowing what's on the other side, set a vision and chart the course towards it. And so, from my current CEO, John Fish, who's truly a visionary leader, to others, I really believe that leadership is about taking others, from where they are today to where they have never been. And that requires a certain type of courage. So these are the people that I now learn from and watch and try and emulate.
That sounds exciting. It's an exciting time and exciting position. So tell us a little bit about, I always like to give a gift, a resource, something to our listeners, to myself. So do you have a book that you love, an article, a link, podcast, a video, something that you could share with us that we might learn more?
Research. So I listen to the McKinsey podcast quite a lot. I find them very useful for thought pieces, short consumable thought pieces. And recently there was one on the ethics of AI. And so, the potential for AI is well known, probably even overhyped slightly, but it's a very exciting field. But I think that as a society, we're still just starting to learn how to think about the ethics of it. When is it actually a net positive? When can it do harm? And how can we guard against the biases baked into AI that just perpetuate bad decisions instead of helping us take better ones? And so as a leave behind, I think I really enjoy the McKinsey podcast personally. And I think that particular one that talks about ethics is really interesting.
Well, we will put a link in the show notes for this episode so everyone can get a hold of that and look at it. It sounds exciting. And yeah, you hear more and more every day about what are we going to do as AIs? Machines get smarter than we are. They can learn faster and better than we can. What are we going to do?
Yes.
How are we going to treat that as a society, as an industry? So how can Construction Nation get a hold of you?
I'd say, well, I'm, like everyone else nowadays, I'm present on social media, and probably the best way to get a hold of me is via LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Jit Kee Chin at Suffolk. And I encourage you to send me a short message, send me a note. Love to be in touch.
And we'll also put Jit's LinkedIn link on the show notes, so you'll have that. So what is your parting advice for all of us? What could we start doing tomorrow that would allow us to be a part of this movement forward and really make sure that we are creating the future that we want and based on what we need to do today to be ready for tomorrow?
Well, given the role, I feel like I have to say this. I would advise everyone to make sure that you're standing on the solid footing of facts to the furthest extent possible when you're taking important decisions. I think part of that is making sure your data is solid and it tells you what you think it's telling you. And then the hard work in that is making sure that whenever you're capturing information, you're capturing the right information. I think that's the kind of prosaic part of it. I think more broadly, I encourage everyone to participate in this conversation and to really think about what are the types of problems that we face day in, day out that we think more information, better analyzed, can actually help us, right? What are some of the, perhaps gain a basic understanding of the different predictive, prescriptive techniques that are out there now and say, well, if I could apply predictive analytics, how would this help me today? If I could do that, how could it help me today? And I think if we continue having this conversation and the use cases and the problems become clearly defined, then modern technology can actually meet it and help us solve these problems in a new and better way.
It is very exciting. And congratulations for all the hard work you're putting in and what you're creating as even a new vision for what construction could become. It's so exciting. I appreciate it very much. And I thank you so much for taking time to be a guest here on Construction Dream Team. We are salute the work you're doing and the work you're going to do. And I hope that you'll come back and keep us apprised on what you're doing and how it's evolving, because so many of us in the industry are there in the day-to-day stuff, and we're trying to do things, but we need someone who maybe can take us out into a broader look on what could be happening. Or like, I'm just thinking about the action item. Some folks have a lot of data. Other people are like, well, we're just sort of getting data. And so we're all along a continuum here, and we're trying to move along. So having a big picture and knowing the pathway will be very, very helpful and useful, I'm sure. So I thank you so much, Jit, for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful having this conversation. And I look forward to continuing this conversation in the future.
And so thank you. And wow, Construction Nation, wasn't this a great episode? And Jit has just so much to share, and we have so much to learn and so many things to do together, which is really what this Construction Dream Team is about, creating the dream team so that we can work together and build those construction dream teams that can do extraordinary, exceptional things. And we have a lot of new tools, it sounds like, coming that we're going to need to use and learn how to use better and better. So I hope that you will share this episode with everyone you know so that they can be a part of this thought process of how do we take the industry to the next level? How do we use what we've already got? You always got to start where you're at. How do we use what we've already got to maybe be smarter, better, and faster with the data we already have? And I hope everyone will subscribe to Construction Dream Team. And I know many of you don't know what a podcast is. I've heard that. So here, if you have an iPhone, Siri now can just get you Construction Dream Team. You just say, "Hey Siri, subscribe to Construction Dream Team," and there you have it. It will open it on your phone and you will be subscribed. So if you do subscribe, we hope you'll give us a 5-star rating. That does move us up in the search engine so that more of the Construction Nation can find us and listen to all these great things that we're tapping into the collective wisdom of the entire industry. Remember that Construction Dream Team drops every Monday at 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So join me next week and I will interview another industry leader or expert about the people side of construction so you can learn how to create your Construction Dream Team. Thank you, Jit. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And I will catch everyone next time. Thank you.